I'm Holly Scott-Gardner, and I'm currently living in the United States, so I am from the UK. I'm studying rehabilitation teaching for the blind, so I'm actually working at the moment where I'm an intern. So I'm working as part of my studies, and I traveled to the US last June, so I've been here almost a year now.
Tell me about what your work actually involves, Holly.
So my work involves teaching adults who are blind. So what I teach is classes like cane travel. So some of our students have never used a cane before, so we're really introducing them to that. We're teaching them a very specific cane travel method using what we call structured discovery. So even those of our students who have used a cane before, we're teaching them this method. I also teach home management, so that covers cooking, cleaning, washing your clothes, doing all the things you need to do to manage a house. It could also include ironing and stuff like that. And then Braille, so we teach the students UEB. We're primarily focusing on literary Braille, though we do have some students who want to learn a mathematics code or Braille music or something. And then we teach technology as well.
Tell me about your life before the de facto lockdown was imposed. What were you doing?
So my life was kind of busy. I mean, I was getting up, I was getting a bus at 7:30 every morning to be at work by 8. So when I say work, I'm not officially an employee as I'm an intern, but I'm effectively doing something similar to a job. So be there at 8 to start the morning. I would have a schedule of different classes and students. So some days I would be, maybe spending the morning teaching travel and the afternoon teaching Braille. Other days I would pull students out of their classes individually and work on things like reading with them for students who are struggling, maybe not because of blindness, but obviously we need to teach them to read effectively in Braille, and their reading speed may have been low even if they were sighted. So doing things like that. After work, it varied on the day. Some days I would just go home and cook dinner. Other days I would go out with my co-workers. I would spend time with my housemate, and I guess I lived a pretty normal mid-20s life. I don't know.
Do you share a house?
I do. So the centre has apartments, which is where students live when they're in training. I actually live here, and my housemate is actually a student right now, but she was someone who I already knew before she came to training. So it was kind of a different situation that we ended up sharing an apartment, and it's been really fun.
How has lockdown affected you? I mean, well, perhaps first of all, explain what lockdown actually means for you over there in Colorado.
So lockdown was not officially imposed when lockdown started. We were very much being encouraged to stay at home, and there was then the Centre for Disease Control released guidelines, gatherings of no more than 200, gatherings of no more than 100, gatherings of no more than 50. Then it went to 25. And as the numbers dropped and dropped, it was as as a training center, we had to look at, is it viable to keep doing what we're doing? When it was 200, yes, there's about 25 students and 25 or so staff. So we could say, well, we're well within those guidelines and nothing's officially been imposed and we're reasonably safe. But as things started to escalate, the question became, what is our response going to be? And the director and the management team chose to say to students, we're going to move to online classes. So last Monday, just a bit over a week ago, I don't know what day that would have been. I'm losing track of days, honestly. We were told, tomorrow you'll be starting teaching from your homes and the students will be doing online learning. And we kept it like that for about 3 days. And then it became apparent that, again, cases across the country were increasing and it was becoming a more serious issue. And with 25 students locked down at the apartments, we couldn't actually stop them from leaving. You can't say to people who are, 20, 30, 40, well, we're going to, force you to stay in. You can't do it. You can say to them, you really should. But the more people that were there, the more risk there was of actually bringing it just to the apartments. So the decision was made then to encourage all students to go home. And all but seven have, and the seven that are remaining for different reasons. And I mean, it wasn't really encouraged. The students were told to go home, and flights were booked for them. The 7 who remained have legitimate reasons, personal circumstances where, for various different reasons, they're unable to go home right now. So I'm here at the apartments with them, and we're still doing some online learning to a degree. Um, and we're just kind of trying to keep ourselves going and figure this all out as a group.
So you do at least have a group of people with you, albeit maybe slightly more informal now.
I do, and I mean, we're not visiting each other very much, or when we are, we're trying to remain distant because just if one of us goes to the supermarket, there's still the chance that we can get everyone in the apartment sick. But what we're doing is, we might go for a walk outside and just keep distance and talk, or we're having daily check-ins, one for just the apartment crew at 8:15 every morning. And then at 11:30, all the students and staff get on a Zoom check-in, and we have guest speakers and we do things like that just to kind of keep this community going, because a lot of the students are going home to families that maybe don't understand their blindness, or they're going back to situations where they were very sheltered, and they've obviously gained a lot in training. So it's to keep us all together and to help us all get through this.
When you're going out, how are you coping with the physical distancing that we've been told here we have to do? We've been told 2 meters apart from anybody else. Is that the same for you?
Yes, it is. And I'm not going out too much. I'm trying not to. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm very, very prepared in general. And I always prepare, okay, what kind of things am I going to cook this month? So there was a lot of food in the apartment, so I don't actually have to worry about kind of basic necessities. I am going out for a walk every evening just by myself, and I mean it's easy to keep distance on that. There's not many people out, and obviously I can hear if people are coming, and I'll just step to the side, or they will, or something. So that's not so bad. If I do have to go out, I'll just keep a distance from people. If I need to ask for directions, I mean I can do that without getting really close to anyone, and I can get that information, and I don't really find I need to be close to people anyway, so that's kind of a good thing, I suppose. It's not making it too difficult.
What about in, say, supermarkets or places like that where you might need to be guided? How would you feel about that if you've not actually done it already?
I would honestly choose not to be guided. I have my cane, and I think I can get the person who is assisting me shopping to walk at one end of the trolley, and I can walk at the other, but also I could, have my cane out instead of holding onto the trolley, and I can just tell them, hey, can you tell me if we're going to take a left or a right, and just get that verbal direction. I think honestly, right now, that's the best way of doing it. I don't take human guide anyway. It's not something I do, so that hasn't really been an inconvenience to me.
You've always had a way of doing that, which doesn't involve actually grabbing hold of somebody's elbow anyway. So,
Right. I mean, I think, whilst if you're holding on to one end of the trolley and they're the other, it's not the 2 meters. You're still keeping some distance, and I think we've got to be sensible about that and recognize, okay, if I can't keep the 2 meters, what can I keep? And what is the most effective way of doing this? Maybe you go to the supermarket wearing gloves, and I would advise that wear some disposable gloves, because you're going to be holding on to that shopping trolley, and you're going to want to touch, boxes of things. Oh, does this feel like the thing I want to buy? But if you buy those really thin disposable gloves, I think that also helps. And then, throw them away and make sure you don't touch your face.
how much concern is there in the US in relation to this? Have you been able to pick up the extent of the concern here in the UK, and would you be able to make a comparison?
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching both press conferences because obviously they both relate to me. I mean, all my family is back home. My family are under lockdown. I'm in regular communication with them. And my friends from university and just everyone I know is under lockdown. And then, of course, people here, I would say they're very similar in that some people are taking it very seriously and other people are not. And that seems to be the case in the UK too. I mean, I've seen the holiday makers just not caring. And I've seen the same in the US, people deliberately going, well, I'm going to go to a restaurant. I'm not going to do what the government tells me. That just defiance more than anything. And I think that will probably happen whatever country you're in. I would say that the UK, in terms of their political response, has been better. I'm not always a fan of the British government without going too much into politics, but their response has been, the press conferences are delivered in a manner in which I would expect the government to. You know, they're very concise. They're giving clear regulations, unlike in the US, where you've got President Trump, who is talking about how wonderful America is, and oh, this country is great, and that's half of what his press conference is, and it's not very reassuring. It's not very reassuring to watch him and think, this is the guy who's leading the response. That's not. That's the most worrying part.
So you're going out for your walks every evening alone. What else are you doing to keep yourself occupied during lockdown?
Well, I'm very busy with work, so with the check-ins every day, and then I'm coordinating things like how much food do we have at the apartments. When all the students left to go home, we then cleared the fridges of perishable goods and distributed them to the students who are here, because it doesn't make sense, to leave stuff in the fridges for 6 weeks to go bad when there's people who need food right now. We're trying to minimize trips to the supermarket. For those students who can get deliverers, we're encouraging them to do that, but also recognizing that delivery slots are incredibly difficult to come by. We're lucky that we do have some volunteers and we do have some staff members who drive, who have offered to go to various different supermarkets, and maybe two or three of them will each go to a different supermarket and see if they can pick up a few things, and then between them they'll have enough to bring back. And right now we're doing good on food. My main thing is to make sure that every student has food that they can cook. We've got some students who are great cooks. We've got some students who are just learning to use the microwave. So it's also for me looking at, okay, what do we have and what students do we have, and how do we match the supplies we have to the students who need food. And that's one of my tasks, is to kind of look at that situation and go, okay, how do we make sure everyone has this many days worth of food, but also that they can cope with the food they've been given, because we can't be in the kitchen with them teaching them how to cook, because we can't be that close.
Are there any particular services for visually impaired people in the US that you've become aware of since lockdown and that you're now making use of?
So not necessarily something existing, but the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. So the National Federation of the Blind is, is an organization that covers all the states, but each state has their own affiliate. And in Colorado, some people have organized to find volunteers. They've done a call to action for volunteers, and those volunteers might offer to drive someone to the supermarket, or they might be picking up, an elderly blind person's medicine for them who can't go out now. And so that's really great that this is something that's sprung up in the community response and the coordination. This is led by blind people. Blind people are coordinating this, and they're the ones who have reached out to friends and family to say, hey, would you act as a volunteer? They're matching volunteers to people all over the state. And I haven't needed to use this because, as being an intern at the Colorado Center for the Blind, we've got our own kind of system within the center, but it's very similar to what's happening in the state from the NFB.
I mean, you've obviously been quite busy despite the lockdown. Is there anything else that you've found that to keep yourself occupied that maybe you weren't doing before?
Online games. I'm playing some games. I'm playing lots of RS games, which is nice actually, with the other students and staff who are on lockdown. We're meeting up once or twice a week in the evenings to play some games together, and I think that's really good because, we get on Skype and we're teasing each other and we're having fun while we're playing these games, and I think it helps us all with the isolation.
Are you feeling isolated at the moment?
Depends. Day to day is really different. I would say I'm definitely emotionally all over the place. There's some days when I feel okay. There's some days when I do not feel okay at all. There's other days when I'm kind of distracted and I'm not really having a chance to think about how I feel. So there are definitely times when I feel really, really isolated, and I'm just remembering that there are people who are reaching out, and I can also reach out to people. And I think this has been an experience that's taught me a lot about what matters to me. And I think we get so caught up in the busyness of our lives that it can be very easy to forget that actually the people matter more than your job or more than what you're doing. And yeah, okay, you need your job to pay the bills, but people are what makes your life happier and better. And I think it's really made me realize where I haven't had the connections with people that I should have had. And it's given me lots of things to think about going forward.
There we go. Holly Scott-Gardner in Colorado. Thank you very much indeed.